Victoria remains on high alert for potential flooding, with the north of the state particularly on watch, although there are flood warnings beginning to take hold closer to the CBD, particularly in the Yarra Valley region. Well, joining me now live is Bridget Vallance, the Liberal MP for Evelyn. Thanks very much for your time, Bridget. You've come in from near the Lilydale Yarra Valley region. Are there concerns there at the moment with the flooding and what the weather event earlier in the week will do to locals around that area? Plenty of wineries and a beautiful part of the world.
It is a beautiful part of the world, Simon. Firstly, Happy New Year and thanks for having me on. Yes, with the significant rain event that we've had has caused flooding right across parts of Victoria, but even in my local community across the Yarra Valley and Lilydale, we've had flooding only just today. The Yarra River at Coldstream has come below the minor flood level of 4 metres. So we still do have a number of areas, farms, local sporting precincts and a couple of homes that have flooding and inundation in that area. A number of homes were at risk of flooding again. You know, a lot of the drainage hasn't been able to cope and keep pace. That infrastructure certainly hasn't been able to keep pace with the significant rain event that we've had just this past week.
Do you think the government's paying enough attention to areas a bit closer to metropolitan Melbourne? I mean, we've heard a lot about Bendigo, Shepparton and whatnot. Are there concerns, or do you think the bigger risk is up in the north of the state?
Oh, at the moment, of course, up in the north of the state is experiencing significant challenges, and they've been there before. So a lot of anguish for many families and businesses in those communities who are still expecting to see the floodwaters peak in the next tomorrow, I believe.
Yeah.
But of course, I think the State Emergency Service, you know, our local SES volunteers do an amazing job. But of course, the state government does need to look at the whole state, and particularly even those areas like Lilydale, which are, you know, in an outer metropolitan area, experiencing flooding on an increasing basis.
Yeah, I want to also ask you about industrial relations in Victoria, because you're the opposition spokesperson. There's a number of EBAs and pay deals that are being negotiated by the government, and it seemed just before Christmas last year there was a 11th hour halt to the action the police were taking. But the wages policy where it's set in Victoria is at around 3%. Would you or the Liberals increase that policy if elected?
Well, the Allen Labor government only just recently increased that to 3%. Although, having said that, they seem to be having industrial disputes mounting. You know, I mean, we seem to be becoming the strike action capital of the country here in Victoria, because the Allen Labor government has a number of strike action on their hands with, of course, the police, you know, and they've indicated that there might be further strike action, potential with firefighters, speed camera operators, even down on the ports. We've got something like 44,000 containers holed up on the ports because of strike action. And so, you know, in terms of that wages policy of the government, you know, at the end of the day, we have a number of frontline services taking strike action, and we've got to ask, what is the Allen Labor government doing about that? They need to be at the negotiating table listening to these frontline workers.
The state's in a lot of debt, though. Can the state even afford to give even more of a pay rise?
The state was in a lot of debt and increasing debt when the government increased its wages policy to that 3%. You know, we have a ballooning public sector wages bill, something like $38 billion now in public sector wages. That's increasing at a time when when government's spending is increasing equally. You know, not only is that increasing, the government has indicated that they are seeking to cut their public sector workforce. We would call on the government to make sure that that isn't going to impact frontline workers and frontline services.
Bridget Vallance, thanks very much for your time and thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Simon.